Hello, 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 everyone. I hope that you are well. This is NicoleMLouis, the social worker strategy mentor. Now, I know you are thinking, why is she on at this time? I know there has been a slight change of plan. Okay, well, a big change of plan. We were meant to go live stream with Bianca at 7:30, but we have brought it forward to now due to some unforeseen circumstances. We didn't want you to miss out on what she has to say about her journey and how inspirational it is and what she's doing. And so we wanted to ensure that it still happened today. And so we brought it forward. So many of you may be actually watching this on the replay, which is fine. We still want you to engage and comment down below, and Bianca and I will certainly will respond. So thank you so much for those of you that are joining live. I'm really excited to see you for my launchers. We're going to be I'm going to be sharing Bianca's journey. What Bianca's going to be sharing, I'm going to be facilitating her sharing her story about what it's like to become fully independent, working towards that, and the process of the changes that she's had to make within herself, and what it's been like just making that mental shift. And so the purpose of that is so that those of you out there that are thinking about taking this step and indeed have already started and contacted me, or maybe doing your own stuff outside of working with me towards becoming fully independent in a very unconventional way, this will hopefully inspire you and give you pointers and help you think about the things that you need to be considering and doing. So I'm going to be inviting Bianca on to join me on the platform in a moment. But before I do that, whether you're watching this live or on the replay, I want you to be able to first put in the comments, where are you joining from? Where are you watching from? What country? And we'd love to know also what area of social work you might be practicing, whether it's children, adults, substance misuse, and tag somebody, tag a social worker that you know would actually find this information useful, where they might like to hear a bit about this so that they can think about taking the steps for themselves. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Bianca up onto the platform and we're going to have a conversation. So we're allowing you to be nosy and listen into our conversation so that you can actually gather some gems, and hopefully it will inspire you to progress into full independence yourself. So Bianca,
hi,
how
Nick.
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, great, great to see you. I feel like I'm super tall and you're down there. So I'm going to try and I don't know if I can make this any higher.
I know we are a little bit.
I know we are. Hold on one moment. Let me see what I can do. And I'm not used to being taller than others. Oh no, I'm making it worse. I need to bring it down. Oh no, that I do need to make it higher. Okay, well, I can't get it any higher than that, but I'm almost
a
there.
More even. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I'm sinking into my seat a little bit. Okay, that's so much better. So now we're eye level. Yes. So great. So good to speak with you, have you join us. It's super exciting. I've been so excited working with you because of how you are. We are very similar, and I always tell you this, right? In the way we do things, like our perfectionism and various things, just the way we think also, and like taking the bull by the horns and going for it and stuff like that. So I love that about you. And so I really want an opportunity for other people to get an insight into you and to learn about I guess it's about what it takes to start this journey of full independence, and the character, the grit, and understanding that, you know, whatever your walk in life, you know, whatever hang-ups you might have about yourself, you know, there's one thing that's synonymous about all the different people that I work with, and even myself. We have certain attributes, right, to being able to become successful. And I know that you also run another business, and we're going to talk about that too, and how we're merging that. And so you're not green when it comes to business at all. You have an understanding of it. And yet, you know, you're able to combine these very different worlds together and actually move forward. And so I'm excited, really excited to share with people. So as I said, for those of you that are watching live, welcome. And if you've got any questions that you want to ask, drop it in the comments. There will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. And maybe even in between, I might pick some up depending on how relevant it is to what Bianca and I are talking about in the moment. And if you've got any comments you want to make, please do share, tag somebody that you know would want to hear this, because I think what Bianca's going to have to say is going to be very exuberating. It's going to really buoy you up into really getting started and telling you that this is something that you can do. So you guys know who I am. I'm the social worker strategy mentor. And as you guys know, I've been fully independent now for 7 years. And it's independent in a very unconventional way. And my plan and my purpose is to really support social workers who want to be fully independent, to do it in an unconventional way where their business wraps around their life rather than the other way around. So you're not burnt out, you're not stressed, and that you're just enjoying life. You're enjoying your career again, especially. And one of the key things for me is making sure that you're not taking the length of time that it's taken me to learn business and making the mistakes, but rather you avoid the mistakes and you really get to enjoy the fruits of full independence. Okay, so that's me, Nicole. And so Bianca, I'm going to invite you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you for inviting me to come on. So I'm Bianca. I have been doing social work since 2014. I think that's when I graduated with my master's. And my speciality is children and families. So that's what I focused on. That was the pathway that I chose. So that's me. That's
Lovely.
what I do.
And what other hats do you wear?
I was going to say, I guess I should add on that so now I'm in quality improvement in social work. So I do a lot of quality assurance, a lot of chairing reviews and CLA reviews and things like that, audits, all that kind of thing. But on top of that, I have a baking business and lots of other hobbies and interests, creative writing, traveling, lots of different things that I like to do. So as you say, one of the things that I think we all have in common, particularly those of us on your program and those working with you, is that we are often juggling a number of things, and often trying to balance and find some kind of way of merging what we can and balancing what we can't. And it's just, it's a lot sometimes. It's a lot to juggle, but that is me.
Lovely. And don't forget that you are also a dog mum.
I am a dog mum. I am a dog mum of 14 years. Yes, that's my big baby.
That's crucial because you know why? Because I don't own dog. When I was little, we had dogs. In fact, I think before I was born, my family had like 5 dogs. They were all Alsatians. And then by the time I kind of came along and I was growing up, we had 2 dogs. And then I got a cat and then the dogs died and then the cat died. And I vowed I'm never having animals again just because I can't deal with that whole, I can't deal with it. I can't like, I cried. My cat died when I was in the 3rd and last year of my social work degree, and I cried for like months after. It was like, it was horrible. So I vowed that I wouldn't do it again. So it's relevant to mention because that's another dimension of you. That's to have an animal and to be caring and having that responsibility also.
And you're right. It's definitely a passion of mine. Dogs are, I used to be terrified. I used to run across the road. I'd be one of those people that, you know, when the dogs come in and they forget that the car is just as dangerous certain times and they just walk into the road. That used to be me growing up. And having overcome the fear, I've now absolutely adore them. So I have Marley. So he's 14, but also I'm very family orientated. That's another key aspect of my life. My family are my world. So I've got nieces, nephews, godkids, you know, my beautiful grandmother who's 92. We capitalize on that quality time together. So that's another key aspect of my life. So when I'm talking about juggling, I guess those are also things, and everyone will be able to relate to different day-to-day things that they have to do. And that they care about, as well as business, of course.
And I love that you mentioned about family, because at the end of the day, I think for most social workers, family is definitely a thing that they say, I don't get enough time to spend with family. Like I spend a hell of a lot of time in work with families but not my own family. And I don't get time for myself. And so, I think that is always one of the leading factors as to why social workers want to become independent, or why they're looking to change career, why they're looking to sidestep into a different department from frontline, because they feel it's going to allow them that more time. And I know from experience of having social workers that are service managers and managers that, moving sideways or even up the ladder doesn't necessarily give you that time that you're looking for. And so independence is always kind of the way out, as it were. So I love that you mentioned that. So describe how it's felt. How have you felt on your career? Like when you started your social work career, when you decided you wanted to be a social worker, versus when you qualified and started doing the job? Like, how has it felt for you?
Ooh, when I started on this journey, do you know what? I from quite young, I knew that I wanted to do things helping people. So, one of my oldest and dearest friends, in fact, was a looked after child. And I didn't know anything about foster care or anything like that. We were really young, we were in primary school, and we're still friends to this day. But her journey really inspired me, because she had a fantastic social worker who kind of supported her through various things. And I thought, I'd love to do that. And you're a kid and you think, but I also want to write books and I also want to do this. But I didn't really know if I would definitely go down the path. But when I got to 18, I realized I couldn't study social work anyway, because I'd be too young. You had to be over 21 at the time. So I had to pick a different career. So I went into psychology and counseling, and that was a different journey. But when I finally did my master's in social work, I'd used all my savings. I'd done everything I possibly could, because I was so sure this is the career that was for me. I needed to be a fully fledged social worker. And so I guess it went from quite a high of feeling as though, I finally got my master's sorted out, to then realizing that I didn't have statutory placements, having anxiety about how that was going to affect my career in terms of roles and jobs and positions, trying to get onto the ASYE role and thinking my competition have probably had a placement in these organizations. They're probably going to be 10 steps ahead of me, to then getting myself back into the right headspace and focusing, having my plan, having my 5-year plan and surpassing that. So it's been an up and down journey. I think social work is like that. It has its good days, its bad days, its in between days, but it's been quite an up and down journey for me. But the start was a bit more shaky. As I say, the start, I felt unprepared, probably quite how a lot of people would feel, ill-equipped and unprepared, even though you've done the studying aspect. But I felt, because my placements weren't statutory, I felt like it kind of put me on the back foot a little bit. So as I say, it was about pushing myself and getting myself focused on what exactly do I need to do by when to get to where I want to be. And then the journey was relatively smooth after that. I won a newly qualified social worker award. I won social worker of the year award. So it kind of helped me to prove to myself that, yes, by being focused, you've been able to still achieve things, even though your start wasn't the same as maybe some other people's. So
that is wonderful. And those I didn't even know they did awards like that. I don't think they did them when I was newly qualified. So that is amazing. I love that. And I want to say that I just want to go back a little bit, because what I heard was that you knew from an early age that you're multi-passionate, and the fact that you have a baking business and you have other hobbies, we know that you're multi-passionate, right? And multi-skilled. But I guess what I'm hearing is that from a young age, social work was definitely on your radar. It wasn't like a fad or something that you were kind of saying, I just want to do as something to add to the list. You were very affirmed in your heart with it. And so you pursued it. And so I'm hearing that there was a lot of elation, maybe a lot of excitement around going into that. But then when you discovered that you wasn't old enough and realized you actually had to do some work beforehand, you were thinking, okay, what am I going to do? So similar to myself, because you know that was a similar story. And so that's where our ability to strategize and plan and be methodical comes in. And so I'm hearing that you've done that then once you kind of got the job, as it were, or qualified, you actually felt that there were still things missing. And so once you realized that you were able to look at how you plugged the holes to the point where you actually won awards for how great you did and recognize, and that is amazing and important to highlight, because it says that you saw the gaps and that you understood what needed to be done to fill them.
Yeah.
And that has got you to where you are now. And so I know for some social workers, they will start off in a place, and once they've qualified, and then they'll move on. I know for myself, I was with a local authority for 5 years before I moved on. How long were you with, or have you been with the local authority that you kind of worked with initially?
The first one was, hold on, let me just think about that. It's about 5 years. It was about 5 years. And I mean, I will say that was such an interesting experience, because again, it's so funny. So many of them now I'm still in touch with. They are literally really, really good friends of mine. And I'm sure you've got the same. And again, it was all of that encouragement that you don't necessarily get as much now, because with hybrid working, it's all of that encouragement on the office floor, you know, whilst you're at the photocopier machine, whilst you're, you know, making a quick cup of tea or something, that you have those discussions. And I think that's something else that has changed considerably from then till now. COVID has an impact on every aspect of life, but definitely social work. So yeah, I was there for about 5 years. Enjoyed my time. It was a journey. Some fantastic people there, and it's the people that made it what it was for my experience there. Yeah.
And let me ask you, how would you, because you picked up on a point about how social work has changed, and I think like social work changes in any event, right? Changes anyway, especially the more we see child deaths. I know that there have been 2 or 3 very recently where children have died this year, been murdered this year. And so, you know, these things often can change also the face of what we're doing and how we're doing it on a day-to-day and on a frontline basis. But talk to me a little bit more about the change over the past couple of years. In fact, what have you seen different, especially for people who are newly qualified, that you have seen when you were newly qualified to now, with the changes that have been made? Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I think it's I personally look at it and find it to be quite contrast. Like I say, I think social work should be social. That's the whole point of us getting into the game of social work. You know, you want to help people, but you also want to help your colleagues. You want to be a team player. You're working towards the same kind of goal. You know, you want to have that camaraderie. And I think that's where it really does differ. When I was a team manager, again, I used to kind of promote a lot of that kind of peer supervision, as well as obviously me supervising staff, but that peer supervision, because you've often come across the same kind of issues. And you just don't get that in a hybrid working way. And I think when you come in newly qualified, especially if you haven't had a placement in that particular organization, so you come in and you don't know anybody, it's a lot more difficult to have those informal elements of building your social work practice, building your confidence and understanding what's expected of you. Now it's a bit more like, oh, I have to write an email to ask that question, or I've got to go out of my way to make a call. And I think it takes a while to find your feet in social work. It takes a while to kind of build your confidence and your competence. So it's not always easy to do that reaching out. And I find that when people contact me, that's a lot of what they're feeling uncomfortable with at the moment. Just feeling a little bit isolated, I guess. And that's to be expected in this new way of working. It has a lot of pros in terms of a work-life balance, which is completely contrast to before, because when I started, it wouldn't be uncommon for you to not take a lunch break. I'm sure lots of social workers can relate to not taking a lunch break, not finishing on time, rushing around. I feel like we're now in a space where if you're organized and focused enough, you will be able to create a slightly better work-life balance for yourself by working from home. But like I say, the flip side is that you can be isolated and you can feel a little bit like I've really got to reach out and go above and beyond to ask something that might seem like a silly or simple question that you could have asked quite informally before. So the environment has totally changed. Yeah.
And I would agree with that, and I'd add to that also, because many of the social workers that I've spoken to, as a flip side of the working from home, while you might think that you can create the work-life balance, when you're going through a season where you're on duty or you're going through a bottleneck of work, actually it can feel even more pressurizing, that there's more expectation, is what I've heard from social workers, that they're by their phone, that they're responsive on emails. And for example, the boundaries are not there, where they're obviously at home, but they're having to maybe have meetings where, clients are seeing part of their home. you know, and they feel like that boundary obviously is being crossed, and they're maybe getting cussed out by a service user, you know, and they don't feel like their home is a safe haven anymore. And so that people are also saying that. So, but yeah, I think that there's a level of discipline, and it's a good thing that you say that, because discipline is discipline in whatever area you take it, whether you're in the office or you're at home. But there's more opportunity, as you say, to do it when you're at home, because nobody's in your house. But some social workers are really finding it difficult. And I think a lot of the time it's those social workers that will struggle with the boundaries in any event. So they'll be working late, they'll be working on the weekend, because it's so easy to do. And you want to make sure that you want to feel like you're on top of things. And I think for newly qualified social workers, you know, they're going to definitely feel that pressure, aren't they? I mean, if I think back to when I was newly qualified, I was fairly experienced anyway, because I'd done a lot of work before in the health and social work kind of arena, in terms of the kind of clientele I was working with before qualifying. But I was also an employment-based student. So by the time I qualified, I had done 4 years of working in a statutory placement, you know, already. So there were no flies on me in that respect. So it was kind of business as usual. But I know for my colleagues, my peers, it was a struggle. And I think in that kind of climate, I think for newly qualified social workers, it must feel quite pressurizing. I imagine. I can't imagine what kind of world that would be, to be newly qualified and to be working from home for the majority of the time, based on what you've described, not being able to, you know, see somebody, but having to call or find an email. Quite difficult, I imagine. Quite difficult.
Definitely. And I think even with the most, you know, best will in the world, some organizations, some local authorities, they have got that person that's attached to the ASYE. They coordinate the program. They really want to support newly qualified social workers, but it's not the same as having that one-to-one person that's specifically focused on you and your goals. That person is still going to have in the back of their mind what the goals are of the organization, because that's what they're paid to do. Yes, they want to help you, but at the same time, they need to focus on the bigger picture. Whereas I think one of the benefits of working with somebody is to kind of really drill down to what it means to you. Because ultimately, nobody was with you when you were studying and you're doing the late nights and the early mornings in the library, you know, doing all the essays. You have to. What worries me is I'm hearing a lot of newly qualified social workers feeling as though the profession isn't for them, because of not having that kind of work-life balance, not feeling as though they're kind of dropped in at the deep end and that they can't do anything but drown. And to save themselves from drowning, they're like, let me just get out of the water. We can find a happy medium. And that's something that I work with a lot of social workers on, just trying to help them to really focus on what they need. So, for example, if you're not disciplined and you're not organized, there was a period of time, particularly because I do a lot of chairing of child protection conferences, where there were loads of conferences in my diary, loads and loads and loads of conferences, and it was not manageable. It wasn't realistic. At some point, you have to put the boundaries in. At some point, you need direction on how to put the boundaries in to say, look, enough is enough. There's what I can do and there's what I can't do. And if all the priorities are jumbled up and all over the place, then which one would you like me to do? Sometimes you can't just continue to take it. You have to set the boundaries for yourself. And I think for me, one of the reasons why I love working with new social workers is because it's about starting those healthy habits from early. It's about giving them that assertiveness and confidence to know that what you're asking of your organization, your employer, your manager is not unrealistic. It's not okay for you to work all weekend. You know, it's not okay for you to feel as though you shouldn't take a break. And even when you're working from home, you made a really good point, because the expectations are higher in terms of how available you are. I don't know if anyone's noticed that there's a little on Outlook, for example, it says, oh, away for an hour, away for 15 minutes, away for, so it calculates how long you've been away from your screen. Subliminally, that is pressuring you to know that you don't want to go 1 minute over or time. Exactly. But if you was in the office, and as I say, you was at the tea point, you was making yourself a cup of tea, and the conversation lasted longer than you expected, you wouldn't feel any way about that. You know? And so we need to rewrite the rules. And that's another reason why I'm so glad I'm watching this now, is because we need to talk about how social work looks going forwards, instead of having it dictated to us. We are the people that are doing the work. So we need to be able to write the rules of how we do it healthfully. You know, it's so
I love that. And you know what, Bianca, because the fact that you're a team manager and you saying that holds so much weight, because I think I'm not sure that social workers hear that enough, and if they are hearing it, it's whether they're hearing it enough for it to cement, because unless you believe something inherently, it doesn't matter whether somebody says it, you're not really going to believe it. It has to come from you. But I think that seeing enough and hearing enough different types of people in senior positions say that is important, is very important. So I love that you said that. And so talking about it, because I think you mentioned something really important here, is looking at how social work changes. Now, we know as social workers, there are ways in which the face of social work changes that are outside of our control. And sometimes it does have to change because of things that are going on in communities and societies, landmark cases that impact the way we do things. What I've felt is that over the years is the changes that have come have not necessarily in full, or the way in which we probably expected it to safeguard children any more than they were being safeguarded before in one space. But then in another way, it feels as though it's made for more paperwork, more bureaucracy, and more stress for social workers, more than more safety. It feels like that towers above the children, us feeling that children are safer. I don't know what your thoughts are of that. And indeed, for those of you watching, please comment and share your thoughts on this also.
I do agree. Again, like I say, I'm not actually managing teams now, Nick, but when I was, before I came into quality improvement and was doing the CP chairing, I kind of felt as though things were shifting into a place where social workers were hopefully going to start to feel a bit more safe. I can see now from chairing conferences every day that that's not the case. Anxiety is high because even how the media put the cases across, as we know, social workers, we're often our heads on the chopping block. We are in the firing line, and I'm not saying that there aren't areas where we could learn from some of these terrible, tragic cases. Of course, there always is areas of learning and development. However, I do think it's a kind of witch hunt a lot of the time, and we're still in that space. No matter how many times we hear stories in the media, we're still in that space where the approach to deal with the tragedy hasn't changed. And so I think it's a lot more pressure for social workers. There's a lot more hoops to jump through. I mean, I'm an advocate for obviously promptly writing up case notes and keeping things up to date on the systems and things like that. But I think it's never enough. It will never be enough. And that's why I always say to people, the to-do list will be there forever. Obviously, you prioritize. There's things that are really important. But if you're worried about a family, don't think you have to work all weekend to deal with that, because there's other people that are in a place to do it. I think we just start to operate in a place of anxiety and we don't even realize it's happening. It's just bit by bit by bit. And then we find ourselves burning out. And I think for me, the to-do list will always be there. Anxiety will always be there. You want to keep children safe, but they're not living with you. You're not with them 24/7. And we have to be realistic about how much we can do. And so do the best you can. Record what you need to record on the system, refer to where you need to refer. But we need to be able to take our work life and our personal life and have it separate. Because once it starts to merge, it's very, very difficult for you to have good emotional well-being, to be able to do the good job you want to do. So it's a bit of a cycle, but I definitely think anxiety is high. You have to stop and think, why are there so many stories in the media? We know that sadly these things happen, but is there a reason why it's been reported so much more often now? There's so much to unpick there. But for me, as I say, it's about looking after yourself. If you don't look after yourself, then you can't look after the families.
And I think that's a key point, is about that balance, isn't it? And I think it's like a conversation that just never ends in our industry, isn't it? Because I think even more now with how things have changed with the pandemic, social workers are feeling under more pressure than ever. And I was looking at some research about the mental health of social care workers, and the struggle is real, like the level of anxiety and depression that people are feeling. I know one of my launchers, who is on my community program, during our time together of being on the program, one of children on her caseload committed suicide, and she didn't know who to call. She called me and we had a conversation. We were able to unpack things, offload. And really able to just reinforce the good work that she's doing, that she did everything that she could. It wasn't her fault. But, you know, those are the kind of real things that we are dealing with as social workers, and having to deal with the aftermath and the trauma, and still have to continue coping and managing with other families. And again, I think these are all things that can be part and parcel of the stress that social workers feel as to why they want to leave. And they're good social workers that have got a lot to offer. And, you know, the industry isn't an industry that doesn't have its positives, or where you don't feel as though you're doing good work and you're seeing the changes. But I think the undercurrent of anxiety and stress and pressure that social workers are living with on a day-to-day basis, it feels, I can say from my own recollection of when I was on frontline and those that I'm speaking to on a day-to-day basis, you know, it is really a case of they are feeling that pressure way more, and they're feeling that more than this was a great day. This family made so much progress. This feels so good to be doing this kind of work. And that's where we get into kind of the difficulties of people wanting to just exit. So let's talk a little bit about what it is for you as to why you're thinking about independence. How did that come up for you, and why was that a thing?
So I got to a crossroads. I realized, as I said, I had that 5-year plan when I started, and I realized because of lockdown as well, I'd achieved the 5-year plan. I'd gone through being newly qualified. I'd spent some time just as a social worker, kind of consolidating my practice. I then did my PEPs to have students, was a team manager, then was a quality improvement lead doing quality assurance. So I kind of thought, what am I going to do next? And then I was turning 35 as well. So it kind of coincided.
Something about this 35, because I had my independence epiphany at that time too.
And I was just like, okay, B, what are you going to do? Because my understanding of independent social work was very different to what I now know. So it was a real big decision in terms of, I mean, I'm sure we'll go on to it, but if someone says to you, do you want to use as much skills and hobbies and interests that you've got alongside your social work qualification, it's very different than saying, do you want to just do court work? Because that's what I thought it was, just court work assessments. And although I've enjoyed my time in court work, I really have, but there's a limit. There is a limit to how much of that work you can do. So I got to the stage where I said, B, what are you going to do with your career? Do you want to, because my previous career was in counseling, like I said earlier. So I was trying to figure out, do I want to return to that? And now I'm seeing where there's a possibility to merge 101 things. However, coming across yourself was literally just by fluke on LinkedIn. So when I came across your page, I just saw it as a sign. I'm very much an energy university person. So, you know, I think God will give you a sign if you're thinking a certain way, just to lead you down the right direction. And so I just saw that as a sign, and I said, okay, well, there's an opportunity for me to send an email. Let me see if I get a response back about how to get involved in independent social work. How do I learn more about it? And then here I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you really hearing your journey from like when you were younger to wanting to do all these different things, including social work, to strategizing, having a little dip. It was kind of a bit of a roller coaster, because you realized, okay, there are actually things missing, even though I've qualified. So now let me plug those gaps. And then you've really progressed in your 5-year plan, as you put it, and progressed yourself to where you wanted to be. And then you got to that crossroad at the next level. And it's very similar to myself. Like, our stories are so, with the exception, I didn't win any newly qualified awards, because I don't think they happened at that time. But also the fact that I think my crossroad didn't come until like the 35 mark as well. Up until that point, like I had planned my career up to knowing that I wanted to be employment based, and that was going to take me for the 5 years, and I'm good. But then it was after that I became, you know, social worker, and I left. Well, I was already a social worker, but after I left the local authority I'd been with for 5 years, I was just kind of wandering, and I did the island hopping thing. Okay, without the fun and partying. I just did the island hop to different local authorities. And then at the 35 mark, like yourself, that's where I got to my crossroad. So it's a very, very similar. So, okay, and so you thought, all right, independence. You knew you didn't want to do court work. So had you have not come across myself that was talking about social work or independent social work in a very different way, what do you think you would have gone on to do?
I would have gone down the court work route. It's something that I'm comfortable in and familiar in. So I would have thought, oh, let's stick in your comfort zone. You've done the court work, you've given evidence 100 times, you can keep doing it. You've done assessments 100 times. So I would have stayed in my comfort zone. I would have definitely stayed within social work, but I would have just branched off to do independent social work in the traditional way, I call it, or the way that we most commonly hear about. And I think as well, another reason why I reached that crossroads is because we had lockdown, and getting to that stage of the 5-year plan before COVID, and then being in a space where you don't know what to do career-wise. You don't want to make a decision because you're in lockdown. You don't know what is recruitment going to be like when you're all in your house. You know, half of us probably didn't have the hybrid working tools, resources that we have now, that we're two and a bit years into this pandemic. But at the time, it was like, this is not a time to make career changes. But then no one dreamt it was going to go on for as long as it did. And I remember a couple of weeks before my 35th birthday thinking, you're going to be 35. Where's the last couple of years gone? You've been indoors, lockdown, working very hard. But what is going to happen next? And I just felt like I had to make up for some lost time, because had we not have had the pandemic, I feel like I would have still been, the 5-year plan would have been completed, but I would have reset and done another one, because I work better with a plan in mind of why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I'm trying to get to. But I just felt as though the last couple of years were a blur, and I was just like, no, we need some direction. So that is what really, really spurred me on. But if I hadn't come across your page, I would have just thought to myself, go agency, be a locum social worker, which is what I'm doing now, go into ISW, doing assessments and court work, and that's that. And that's what I would have done, and missed out on all the other opportunities since then.
And there's a couple of things about that, around that in itself, because I know with doing agency, you're generally on a PAYE because of IR35. We can no longer operate in that way where we can just do it. You'd actually have to really be fully independent, or go with an agency that provides independent reports, and is like a provider, a broker, as it were, for social workers who want to do reports.
That's what I was thinking.
And I know that I think one of the things, and if I know you well enough, that probably wouldn't have lasted very long, because you would have got bored.
You know me.
You would have got bored, because it's the monotony. I mean, working with families, and you see different families, and even if they've got similar things going on, you're always looking at it with a fresh lens, and they're going to have dynamics that are always going to be different. But I think it's the process of doing the same kind of thing. Okay, you get the report, you read the bundles and bundles and bundles, and you go and do the interviews, and then you sit and write it, and then that's it, essentially. Whereas, I don't know, just doing it unconventionally, there's so many other layers, and being able to reach people on a different layer and in a different way, that I think speaks to us as people who are multi-skilled, multi-passionate, and are creatives. And so I think it speaks to us in a very different way. And that's why what I've seen in you, how you've connected on the program and how you're progressing in the program, is amazing. And the similarities that I see between us. So yeah, that is, I'm glad to hear that you would have stayed within the industry, because the industry needs you. You know, like social work still needs you, and there's still much for you to do. So Paula is saying there's not enough hours in the day, and there's a lot of paperwork. Absolutely, there is, which is why people look at the independent route, because they feel it's going to garner them something different. And unless you're creating your independent practice and business in a very unconventional way, it will be just that, a lot of paperwork. I have found that of the social workers that I've spoken to that are fully independent, that are doing assessments, they are having to do a lot of assessments to ensure they're replacing their income. And when they are doing assessments, they're traveling all over the place. They're still having to, sit down and be reading reams and reams of paperwork because of bundles. They're having to do a lot of writing and typing up, rather than, creating something, doing it once and just delivering and rinse and repeat, turning up and delivering to that, or being able to create something and they get paid while they sleep, you know, and still hitting the mark, still actually touching lives and still being able to actually help people make a change that they're able to do before they even get to social services, and that they're in control of. And so that's the big difference between unconventional, what you're creating, Bianca, and what most other social workers are doing. So I love that you've said that, as far as remaining within the industry. So let's talk about the Accelerate Now program, because wow, our time is going already. And so we've got just a few minutes left, about 10 minutes or so left. So let's talk about the Accelerate Now program. First of all, what did you think the program was going to be like?
Okay. I thought it was going to be a situation where you teach something, you explain something, you show me something about how to set up the business, and then I'm kind of left to my own devices to get on with it. That was what I thought would happen, because I'm very aware that I'm investing in your knowledge. So that's how I thought it would be. And again, the expectation was based on previous learning models, because that is what normally happens. You sign up to a program, you're given information, and then you have to implement it in your own time. So that is exactly what I thought it would be.
Okay.
And elaborate on what it was.
No. You can share. Were there any other myths that you had of what you thought it would be like, or what you didn't think it would be?
What I didn't think it would be is A, as hands-on, and B, as, I think, as you say, because you and I have similarities, it's very easy, I find. And I always leave feeling like my brain's buzzing, I'm exhilarated, and I know that, okay, this is what I'm doing next. And I have that kind of, again, it's the similarities. I'm not used to having a mentor, I'm used to mentoring. So I think all of that, my expectations weren't necessarily clear, but I just thought of it as very much a skeleton, and it's been fleshed out so much more. You know me and my analogies, but it's been fleshed up so much more than I would have thought on paper at the beginning. So yeah, I definitely didn't have a realistic expectation. I'd say that much. It's been more than that, to be fair.
And I get that, and I think everyone says that when they work with me, even on the community program, which is very much like what you described, that you get the learning, you get the understanding, you have to go away and implement, but you're told what you need to do, but you still have to go and implement it. Whereas on our program, the Accelerate Now program, I'm actually creating it with you right there and then, and that's the huge difference. And so we're like, the time is shortened from a year to 4 months, which is a big difference. And so I think many social workers say that, because even for myself, you know, doing courses, you know, you don't do courses like that, especially in our industry. It's not like that. It's very corporate. It's very, what might be deemed professional. You know, it's done in a very different way our view of professional is done in a certain kind of way. And so this is what being unconventional is about. It's about reaching people on just the human level, like throw away rules, regulations, what is perceived as professional, and let's actually help people in a way that is best going to fit their learning style, and in a way that will touch them so that they will remember it, and they've got the skill to go out and implement it with or without you. That's what my programs are about. So, okay, so I love that. So those were some of the myths you've had. And so share a little bit about, well, say in 3 words how you describe the program in 3 words.
Empowering. Definitely. I know our social workers like that term. It'll be able to relate to that. It has been very empowering. Eye-opening and growth. I'd say those are 3 words: empowering, eye-opening, as you say, because I had all those myths and it's just completely blown them out the water. And then the growth. It's been unreal. If someone had said to me that you could do so much in such a short space of time, I would have thought, but how? But I think because you are there every step of the way, helping to implement these things, that really works well for me. I think if I was focusing solely just on my ISW business, then maybe I would be able to spend evenings and weekends outside of our sessions doing some of the bits. But if I'm not in the kitchen, I'm spending time with the family. You know, I'm spending time walking Molly. I'm doing so much other things.
You're
Besides
taking a break, giving yourself a breather from work.
taking a break, trying to make sure I have those boundaries, because again, when you have got a number of passions and drives and ideas and things you want to implement, it does become a 24-hour thing. It doesn't affect your sleep, and I have to be very disciplined with myself. So with all of that, the growth to know that I can still be successful, but also have my health and have a work-life balance is a beautiful thing, you know. So that's for me are the three words. I mean, growth, empowerment, eye-opening, but the growth especially in this short space of time. And that's
And
as
the
a
things
person
that you've
as well.
learned, and you get it. That's what I've noticed with you. Like when we're in our sessions now, especially like the last two, there are things that you're saying before I even say it. And I'm like, yes, she's got it. Yes, she's got it. This is exactly why we do it. So you're actually learning the skills and you're applying it. You're doing the thought process, which is exactly what I want, how I've designed the program. So you're actually doing the thought processes and you know how to apply it in different areas. That's exactly it. I love that. And so, and so I want to ask you, you know, in terms of what you've provided and what you're sharing, you know, I want people to know that your thing is about newly qualified social workers. That is your jam, that is your expertise. But like you said, you also have a baking business, so you are the baker as well. And we have managed to merge that, and people will see that when you launch. And you go forward, and people who want to work with you, they're going to see and understand how that has been brought together. And I want you to say a bit about the process of that session that we did, where we drilled down of how you were going to have this niche. How would you describe it?
That was like an epiphany moment. That was like literally a light bulb moment, because again, anyone that has a number of hobbies and interests, one of the things I was worried about was losing what I'd spent so much time creating, because I taught myself to bake. I needed something outside of social work because I found social work to be very intense. I wanted something where I wasn't on a laptop, I wasn't on a phone, I wasn't answering emails, and I could just go and be creative, because I realized I didn't do my creative writing anymore like I used to. So I thought, what else can I do? What else can I teach myself? So went in the kitchen, got started on that journey. And so it means a lot to me. It is like another little baby. I don't want to lose it. And so coming into this, that moment in that session of realizing, oh my goodness, these paths can cross, it was a real shock for me. And I think, you know, I don't want to give too much away about the products, because it's going to be launched and there'll be some exciting things coming up for people to enjoy around that time. But for me, it's also important about us celebrating our profession. It's about us celebrating, as you said, the good that we do. We often only hear about things when people do something wrong. I'm definitely an advocate for sending, I mean, it could be the smallest thing, but just sending people those kind of positive affirmations to let them know, yeah, you've done a good job. Thank you for the way you presented that case. Thank you for the way you dealt with this family. And that can be put on a cake. That can be put, who doesn't like something edible and tasty to say, wow, somebody was thinking of me, or somebody realized I had a bad day yesterday, or do you know what I mean? But with nice personalized elements that us as social workers can relate to, that is really important for me. And so being able to incorporate both, I never ever thought, I mean, cake and social work, completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
And creative writing. Don't forget the creative
writing. That is another one
we
I'm
work
excited
that in as well.
Yeah, work that in. You know, that's another thing that's important for me, because I was definitely a bookworm growing up. I was definitely that person, always need to understand why. Don't just tell me the what. I was that why kid. That why, but why? But why does it have to go like that? So all the reading that I did, reading for pleasure, reading for knowledge, and I feel like we've slightly lost that a little bit with some of our young people, and they will be completely oblivious to that world. So helping them to be able to access, you know, reading materials that are going to stimulate them and are relevant to what they're going through in life, and things that they can actually identify with, as well as taking those skills out of them. There's bound to be, I mean, we've had so many fantastic authors, as we know, in the world. The new generation, there's bound to be some in them as well. So we need to find that and pull it out of them. Do you know what I mean? So there's so much elements of things. The counselling, I would love to do counselling with social workers going forwards, clinical supervision, that type of, there's just so much that I want to do. But we have to take it one step at a time. And at the moment, the focus is the newly qualified social workers, because I feel like that is a part of the pandemic. I feel like we won't have much of a profession if everybody comes in and within 6 to 12 months feels that, oh, this isn't for me because I don't have what it takes. Often it is that you've got what it takes. That's why you got your course and that's why you got your qualification. But you just need that guidance to help you to not lose sight of your personal why. And so that's the one thing that I'm really focusing on before the launch, is making sure that people have that space, safe space,
and
where they can come have coaching in regards to their careers as newly qualified workers.
And I love that, because what you're creating is so different, like in terms of how you're going to be coaching these newly qualified social workers and how you're going to be pouring into them, and really you're upskilling them and up leveling them from the moment they are they may not have even yet qualified, and they can start working with you from there and work all the way up until their 5-year plan. And so what you have created and are creating is like nothing. There's nothing else out there like this, done in this way. And I'm so excited to see it. I cannot wait. So this has been amazing in terms of listening to your journey on the program. And I just want to ask you a couple more things around what you've created, and even things like your logo and all the things that you have learned, the business acumen, because you run a business already. And I know that we looked at that and helped merge it and made sure it was streamlined. And I know that you noticed and we discovered that there were many gaps in that business in terms of how you had created it and everything that hasn't been allowing you the time. And so, you know, what was that process like in terms of, or let me ask you in this way, has the program given you business acumen that you feel has been crucial to you being able to confidently move forward, even when the program is done?
Yes. And underlined, capital, highlighted, yes, because what you managed to do, Nick, there's certain areas of running a business. I just want to serve people. I enjoy that part. I enjoy people getting what their needs met. That's great. But what I didn't want to do is some of the behind the scenes trickier bits. And so what you forced me to do in the nicest of ways is stop burying my head in the sand, and have those systems in place so that whether I'm present or not, the business can still run efficiently in the way that it needs to. And there were things that I had been procrastinating on sorting out for so long, like getting a new accountant, for example. Those types of things, it was just so much easier to push it to one side and help a social worker or go and do a cake, or it was so much easier to do the bits of the business that I love. But it's all a part of excuse me, being accountable, being efficient, and also making sure that you have structure, because here I am helping people to build their own systems and have their own structure in their careers, but behind the scenes in my business, I'm just ignoring one aspect that I don't particularly enjoy. It doesn't work like that. So again, I guess what I'm trying to get across to people is that this program, you come into it focusing on independent social work, but it's also going to drip feed into other areas of your life that are only going to enhance you and help you to level up across the board. Because this business won't work in isolation. There'll be other things where there's overlap. So yeah, that's another thing that I've really gained from doing this program.
Excellent. And would you recommend the program to other social workers who, even if they're semi-independent or they've kind of got their business up and running and they're doing it in a conventional way, but maybe aren't feeling as fulfilled? Would you recommend the program, and why? What do you think they can get out of it?
I think if you want to find your feet and do social work in a way that's rewarding to you, and not in a way that's subscribed to you, I would definitely recommend the course. I think for me, the program is the opportunities and the possibilities are endless. For some unknown reason, nobody else does this. I don't understand why, but you know, Nick, you do it and it opens doors. Another thing I think why I would recommend the program is because social work is changing. The world of social work is evolving. As we said, due to the pandemic and many other factors, the political aspect of things, so much is changing. And we can't, for me, what I didn't want is to invest so much time and effort and energy, money, etc., into my career, only to be dictated to about how I use that skill. That's not what I wanted. And I think this program gives you the opportunity to be able to decide how you're going to use your social work qualification. Yes, there's certain experiences that you may want to get elsewhere, but it allows you to remember that it is your qualification. It's not something that you've been given because you've not worked for it. You've worked so hard, and it's a profession that we should be proud of as well. So when you've got your qualification and we're all part of this profession, we should feel that we can go out. Like some of the people I work with say to me, oh, I don't tell people I'm a social worker. And that makes me really sad, because I think you shouldn't feel ashamed, especially when the stories come out on the news and stuff like that. It makes it even worse. But people shouldn't feel ashamed. We do some fantastic work. We make some amazing differences in people's lives. And I think this reminded me that it's not about me allowing other people to take over my qualification. It's about me harnessing that and deciding how I want to use my qualification for different times in my life. And there's no restriction on that. So,
and I want to echo that in terms of people not being ashamed, because the reality is there is a need for social services. In my view, it is an imperative part of the community. I know people that might not be a popular opinion, or unpopular opinion, as the saying goes, but I believe there's a place for it. There needs to be intervention sometimes in the lives of families to help parents, families, people do better in caring and protecting for the vulnerable in our community, whether it's children or older people who are vulnerable, disabled people with substance misuse difficulties or addictions. There needs to be accountability, and there needs to be the right support being put in. But how that is done feels as though it needs a shake-up. We need to be doing more early intervention. We need to be allowing people to be in more control and accountable for their own lives, and that's what independence can do, especially when it's done the unconventional way. Like just assessing people, there has to be a limit. Like there are over 100,000 people registered as social workers in the UK. If half of those, let's say, or even a third or a quarter became independent, we can't all be doing the same thing. Like there has to be some that are providing services that fill the gap. And that's really where the unconventional independence comes in. And so again, I just want to thank you. I'm really, really excited about what you're creating. I cannot wait for the launch. And what we're going to be putting together, and all the other things that you've got coming because of your multi-passionateness. And it's going to be so exciting. Yeah, so people, you need to look out for Bianca. Make sure you're connected with her. If you are a social worker you're thinking about doing your social work degree and you may not even got onto your program yet, it doesn't matter. Connect with her. Bianca, share where you're going to be, what platforms you're going to be on as your business. Share.
Yes. So I am going to be on Instagram. I'm going to be on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn now. So if anybody wants to find me on there, it's Bianca McKay. And also I will have my website that we're still building at the moment. We're just kind of putting some finishing touches on that, but the email works. So if anybody wants to chat and they're concerned about anything or they have any questions, they can email hello@biancamckay.com. And I can answer any questions there. But as I say, it's really useful for me, even networking like this, because I want to make sure that everything I create is of use for the people that actually need it. As I say, we're all in this profession together, and we're trying to get the most out of the work that we do, and it's something that we should be proud of. So anything that people want to give me in terms of feedback, comments, questions, queries, you can drop me an email there. And then as each thing comes out, as each platform begins and each product's launching, I'll be able to keep you posted on that as well. So definitely keep in touch.
And Bianca is available. You are doing like 15-minute consultations for those that are interested. And so this is specifically for social workers who are maybe at this point in time, if you're newly qualified, but especially if you haven't even got your AYC and you want help with your application and to understand what to do in the interview process so you can sail through it and increase your chances of securing an AYC role, pay a good paid role. Remember, she is a team manager, so she knows what is required and what they're going to be looking for. So she's going to be helping you in that. So, and then take you forward to look at your career, your 5-year plan. So this isn't just something that she's going to come to you for. You're going to go to her for a little piece of work. She's going to be able to hold your hand through the whole process and mentor you. So And again,
Exactly.
for those that are already maybe done your AYC program, but you're newly qualified and you want help to really plan out a solid, structured 5-year plan and think about where you're going in your career to make sure that you're going to avoid your burnout, avoid the pitfalls, whatever it is that you want to make sure that you are enjoying your career and not kind of dreading it and worrying about where's this whole thing taking me. Bianca's who you need to be in touch with. So just drop her an email and she will be able to take it from there. Thank you, Bianca, so much for joining me. And I look forward to when you are closer to your launch. We're going to definitely be doing another one of these live streams, doing Q&A. Thank you for those that have joined. Thank you for your comments. Hello, Khalifa. Good to see you. And those that are watching on the replay, please, you can still join in the conversation. Put your comments, put your questions, and Bianca and I will go in and answer them. So thank you so much for joining us. And Bianca, we will see you again very soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye for now.